Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I am Paul Ndiho. In this episode, we explore the recent White House meeting between President Donald Trump and 5 West African leaders, making a renewed push by the US to shift its engagement with Africa from traditional foreign aid to trade and economic partnerships. The leaders of Liberia, Senegal, Gabon, Mauritania, and Guinea-Bissau praised the US president for his role in the regional diplomacy, particularly in helping mediate tensions between Rwanda and the DRC. But beneath the diplomacy lies a complex agenda. The Trump administration used the meeting to quietly push for a controversial migrant relocation plan, urging those African nations to temporarily host non-African migrants being deported from the United States. To help us unpack the significance of these meetings and its broader implications for US-Africa relations, I'm joined by Melvin Ford, a leading voice on Africa policy and the president of the Constituency for Africa. Hello, Melvin. Welcome to Different Perspectives.
Good to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for blessing me. This is the first time you're on this show.
I miss you on the Voice of America and all them things, but you have to continue to get the word out. It was really one of the most reliable sources of information for people around the world, especially across Africa. Mm-hmm. They enjoyed hearing the perspective that were portrayed on VOA. So I don't know how we're going to continue that going forward,
Well, through platforms like this, every one of us is trying to create something where they can keep doing what they were doing at the Voice of America. And I think we'll succeed in putting the messages across. Let's start with the broader picture. President Trump says he wants to shift the U.S. policy from aid to trade in Africa. In your view, is this something that a lot of Africans can look up to, or it's one of those political posturing?
In my work, I'm non-political. It's not about Democrat or Republican. If you look at the history of CFA, Jack Kemp was my vice chair until he died, a Republican stalwart. Congressman Ron Dellum, big-time Democrat, was the chair for many years. Democrat, it didn't matter. Let's talk about Africa. But with the Trump administration is something else. We all are shocked and saddened by some of the things that have transpired over this first 6 months or so. We're despondent about the Voice of America going away. We're despondent about USAID. If you would have said we're going to change it and we need to improve it, I got a whole laundry list of things that could have been employed. But to throw it away, I'm not sure how that's going to work out for Africa and other people around the world, and even for us here in the United States. So we're all in a position of wondering what is going to happen next. How is Africa going to respond? What can we do to push this administration to change courses and to at least focus on things that actually can help people, So it's a lot of work to be had here.
You brought up Voice of America. I worked for Voice of America for the last 20 years until they sent us home. So just like you, a lot of people, especially our audience, our African audience, they miss us. People have been calling us, asking us what's going on. Is Voice of America coming back? And I'm sure you hear some of those echoes reverberating where you are as well.
Every day, somebody sending me a note about AID project, HIV/AIDS project, or maternity child health, or where is the round table? Where, Shaka Sali, our brother. But I get calls all the time on these kinds of issues, and they certainly are increasing in numbers.
Let's talk about the significance of Trump's meeting with African leaders. This is not the first time that Trump has extended an olive branch to some African leaders. Just as we speak, he recently brokered a peace deal between DRC and Rwanda. A lot of people looked at that as something that was a long time coming. Now, fast forward a couple weeks later, he invites 5 West African leaders to Washington. Set the stage for us, Melvin.
Again, I'm not trying to be political. Nobody has all the answers, and there's plenty of room for new ideas and new concepts, and I'm always open for that. But to say that the decisions of the Trump administration, based on what he did in his first term, where he called the African countries the most derogatory name you can imagine, which I know I can't say on this broadcast, but come on, how can a president call human beings this? And so, okay, from there, the first lady went to Africa, put on a safari hat, and looked like she was in a Tarzan movie. And so, okay, not much got done. We went through COVID, and they spent a lot of time trying to slow things down and not make it happen. Now he comes back as president, and he seems to be taking a vengeance on Africa. We saw what happened with the president of South Africa came, and he basically accused them of taking land and treating them, and he bringing several hundred of thousands of the white Afrikaners here as refugees. When they came in, and I saw the film, I said, it looked like they came from Malibu or Paris, or they didn't look like refugees. I know what a refugee looked like. And so, what is this? And so, there's a lot of skepticism out there. The administration is not clear about who's calling what shots. You don't have an assistant secretary for Africa. You threw away the diaspora commission. There's no way that we hear it from any
advisor for Africa, though. We have a special senior advisor, Mr. Bolas.
I never met him. That speaks, I would think volumes of what we're talking about. I understand he's related to Trump's himself, and so what are we talking about? We see no coherent strategy coming out of this administration, and I don't expect anyone to come anytime soon.
How about people who said that by him extending these invitations to different African leaders, him mediating in a crisis that has killed so many people, that's reaching out to Africa. That's trying to show Africans that Africa is not forgotten.
I see it kind of differently. I see the brokering of a peace deal in the Congo, with the U.S. getting strategic minerals as a result. Congo has always been about those resources, and whether the Chinese or the Russians or the whoever going to Congo, they go in there for mineral resources, and so we seem to be of the same disposition. It's not about solving the problem. It's about what is the deal, and if we do this and do that, we get this, and you get, and so, and we don't even have a sense of where those resources will flow, even to the United States. Who in fact will they flow to? So it's a lot of questions out there about the policy, but I don't hear any. I hear they say don't work with the Chinese. But whenever you land in Africa, whatever airport, you're going to land at an airport built by China. You're going to go on the highway into town built by China. That railroad going on that side that you see going by, China. You go past the port, China, and you say don't be their friend. There's a lot of questions here. And then I think with the demise of AID and PEPFAR and those sorts of things, we're going to have another pandemic within the next year. We just had COVID. We had AIDS. We had Ebola, they say every 4 years you're going to get a pandemic. Will we be available to respond in any kind of way?
You bring up a very interesting point. There are a lot of people who have criticized the administration's policy towards Africa. There are people who said that by stopping USAID, by stopping PETFA, and all these other programs that are really meant or did good for Africa, is giving China leverage. US is losing that to China, is losing that battle to China. How would you respond to that?
Absolutely correct. And I read today where the Russians are going to structure a program that looks like USAID. The soft power. Man, I mean, why don't we give up our leverage? And not to mention the fact that we haven't figured out how to engage the diaspora in support of Africa. We're so busy trying to keep African Americans and Africans from knowing each other and working together. There are people who don't want that to happen, and it's not necessarily Republicans, or it could be Democrats. I've seen over time that there hasn't been a lot of effort to educate Americans about Africa, to build cooperation and coordination among organizations that work on Africa, and to support U.S. policy toward Africa. There hasn't been that kind of push. And so it doesn't matter whether Democrat or Republican per se. It's about African Americans really are working together as we should.
But to your credit, through your organization, the Constituency for Africa, you've done some incredible work at trying to build that relationship between Africans and African Americans. As a matter of fact, you are one of the leading voices when it comes to that issue. If you are in a position maybe to advise the administration, how would you pitch this idea of trying to, to bring these two people together, African and African American?
In addition to VOA and AID, Peace Corps is taking a hit. So that means less Americans will get a chance to go to some of these countries like I did to get started. And there's all kinds of other programs that are also on the chopping block. Most of the NGOs are claiming they don't get the resources that they need, so they're cutting back on staff and that kind of thing. I've always felt that the need here, one, we need to understand that Africa matters. If there's going to be a partner with the United States, we need to live up to that. And we ought to, a long time ago, we could have been helping transform Africa with technology, all kinds of ways we could have been doing much more to be partner to Africa. So Africans wouldn't even raise the question of why not work with America? They will, no, that's our partner. That's what I hear from them about China. I hear that the Chinese, we want you to help, but the Chinese, they're the ones who really have been here. That should have been the United States. And so it's not. We played all kinds of silly games, and we supported a bad government in Africa. We even created corruption in some places. We could have been doing a lot better to empower the next generation. One of the efforts that I'm proud of is something I gave to Obama that became the Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI.
Very good.
And I have always thought that YALI is the best program ever from the U.S. government, where we empowered the next generation, gave them training, capacity, experience, network, and now they're unleashed on the continent. Some of them are going to be African presidents, ministers of finance, agriculture secretary, and I'm convinced that they're going to play a major role to lift Africa up. And this is a good thing coming from the United States.
To your point, a lot of people say that that program, the YALI, is arguably the best thing that has ever happened to Africa, especially when you talk to young people. They say that there is nothing like that has really opened up young Africans to America. Bringing them here, exposing them to all sorts of things, from politics to how business works, to Wall Street, to all these institutions how laws are made on Capitol Hill is probably going to change Africa in so many different ways. Would you agree?
We agree. And I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer, and you're supposed to say Peace Corps is always the best and all that. Peace Corps is second best after Yali. I'm gung ho about Yali. And I thought the U.S. government, they did the selection through the U.S. embassies in the country. And I know the first year or two, African countries got mad because they told the U.S. government, you're picking our leaders. But I mean, I'm saying, okay, if you were to tell Paul Biya to pick the 10 from Cameroon, who are you going to pick? He's going to pick his own, you know. You ask some of these other leaders to send 10 people to the Yali program, they're going to send their own kids, whereas the U.S. government picked based on diversity, gender balance. They had albinos, they had religious diversity, they had handicap, name it, gay and lesbian. Uh, uh, so I thought that the selection was excellent coming from the U.S. government. So it's a kind of program that didn't cost a lot of money, but the impact is significant and great. And another big thing about Yali is the Senegalese met the one from Kenya, and the one from Zimbabwe met the one from Nigeria. So Africans really start to meet Africans. I tried to push them also to link the program stronger to African American youth, and but then that's where the problems start coming in. Oh, we don't have the budget and that kind of thing. So the one weakness I saw in Yali is they didn't effectively link with the African Americans and others in the diaspora over here. They didn't want them, they weren't comfortable them talking directly with each other. And they would have forged businesses going forward. They would have been technology. You could imagine the music and the art and culture, but they didn't do that. That's my one regret
That's a
about
missed
Yali.
opportunity. That's a missed opportunity for sure. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the issue of immigration. My sources tell me that one of the things on the table was the migrant relocation plan. A lot of critics have said it's not realistic to expect African countries who, in some cases, are struggling with their own migration challenges. You have a lot of things happening on the continent. You have influx in some of these places, especially in some of those countries that were invited here. You have refugees who are fleeing the jihadists in the Sahel. How does the Trump administration expect these people, Americans, or people, immigrants who are here to be deported to those countries, looking at it from those conditions that are already on the ground?
My heart breaks, as we all do. And you're looking at this thing, and you look at how this country supposed to came together, so-called refugees. So if any country should understand refugees, it should be us. But the Trump people have taken this thing to mean race, and somehow they're playing to their base that these people have come and taken up U.S. resources. They're going to the hospital. They're getting free food and welfare and blah blah blah, which is absolutely not the case. So you've turned them into boogeymen and somebody they could point to as holding us back. And for their base, it sounds like, yeah, let's get rid of them. But they're not thinking through who's actually producing the food here, who's actually working in the healthcare system, who's actually doing all of this construction and road building and they're thinking, well, these people go back to the Black Americans that they claim are unemployed will go and start working in the field. Huh? Most of them, oh, that's not going to happen. All of the things that immigrate bring to this country, including culture, food, new ways of looking at things, which made America great, really. You're using that as something for your own, something you can lose a pinnacle thing. Oh, get rid of the refugees, these immigrants and so forth. And somehow everything's going to get better. I don't believe that. And I think it's totally unfair what they're doing. And they turn into cities into military zones. And a lot of people who are being tapped are people who have been paying taxes, working 2 or 3 jobs, taking care of the kids, very constructive in their community, and you're saying they're a problem? And what about the families that you are also affected? This is going to be a nightmare for this country, and it shows a lack of conscious. I'm ready to work with the crises that are going around, the world, and we're giving up our mandate of being the world leader.
How about for people who have praised President Trump's economic policy? They say that, especially when it comes to Africa, he wants to tap into the natural resources, critical minerals in some of these countries. Do you think this type of engagement is credible, or it's merely transactional?
Transactional. And I think at the same time, the president isn't talking constructively about any of the real issues facing Africa, but it's the ideal being we can get something out of it. And, I can get something out of it. It's not about solving problems in Africa, be it healthcare, be it refugee flows or governance or anything like that. All I hear him saying is how we can actually squeeze money out of Africa and then push Africa to be our do all and forget about China and that kind of. I think it's short-sighted.
Earlier you talked about some of the programs like USAID, PEPFAR, and all these beautiful programs that the US led or helped Africa with. When you look at what the administration is proposing, how they want to engage with Africa, minus some of these major programs that had been in place for a very long time. Like, I went to refugee camps, like every other refugee camp I ever visited in Africa. The first thing you see a USAID tent. You see, if you're looking at like the food rations that they get, they're all courtesy of the American people. But everything was cut away. And now this model of trade versus aid. What's your take on that?
What's going to happen? You're going to see China, Russia filling that void, and they're going to use that to solidify their relationship with these countries, which plays against what we're trying to do. I think we're putting ourselves in a real bind, and we're not taking advantage of people like you who are from the continent, like yourself, the diaspora, people who are descendants. We're acting like it doesn't matter, when in fact this country has the potential to build relationships with Africa beyond anything that could be imagined. We have technology, we have computer, we got education, we got know-how that can be easily applied to Africa. But we're so busy trying to make sure that these Black Americans and Africans over here don't link up with Africa. Make Africa what it really should be. So I think some of this stuff we gotta keep struggling. Now, you can't just give up. And I think it's important for some of us, like myself, to spend more time making sure the next generation can step up. This thing is going to take 100 years or so to right the ship, but we can't. We still do our part to put it in place. I'm working on my book, my memoir, and half of the memoir is going to be people I've met, the Nelson Mandela, the Bishop Tutu, Jerry Rawlings, and all of that. But the other half are going to be lessons learned and strategies for the next generation. Try to help them to know where at least we're leaving things out and where they ought to pick it up at. And I talk to young people; they love the idea.
I share the same view. When you are ready to launch your book, I would be happy to host you on this platform. Maybe you can make some news right here, and I'll definitely support you and maybe buy a few copies and distribute them around. Because
you get one free, signed, and everything.
Absolutely, you've been a voice, a very critical voice when it comes to Africa and African American, African diaspora. You have been a voice of reason. You have done some remarkable work in that area.
Well, I think when you call yourself an African American, you got to live up to it. You love America and you love Africa, period.
Right, right.
And issues of unity is something that's deep in my soul. And I want to see Africa unite. And I want to see Africa really do live up to its potential. Because all this great stuff is coming out of Africa. And, we ought to be the ones who really lifted up Africa for Africans at home and abroad.
Very well said. Very well said. There are some countries that are reportedly open to hosting migrants being sent from here to Africa. For example, even one of the countries is Liberia. We saw South Sudan. A couple of people were sent to South Sudan. There are other countries that are open to that idea of sending illegal immigrants from the United States to those countries. Now, what are the political and social risks for African leaders who agree to such deals with Washington?
But the young people in Africa are waking up. What you're hearing about daily in Kenya right now, what you're hearing about in Togo right now, are the young, the Z generation. They're waking up. And with technology at their disposal, you're going to find a lot more pressure for good governance and for Africans to make decisions best for Africa. And sometimes the worst humanity you can see are brother against brother. And already if you look at the prison system over here, you'll find a lot of Nigerians as wardens and as guards and so forth. And you think that they would put up with any kind of nuances? You're not Igbo, you're not all this ethnic stuff, and woo. But I think it's the next generation going to have to deal with that one too.
Looking ahead, what should African leaders or African countries be demanding from this kind of a relationship between the US and African countries? What should they expect in terms of trade, in terms of migration, or anything else on the table for that matter?
What the Africans going to do is going to each go for themselves. It's me and my relationship, and that's not about you and your relationship. It's like when they want to get us fighting each other, they throw a few crumbs on the table, and we get to fighting over those crumbs and leave him alone. I think the way Africa is approaching this in each country for themselves, and so if I can get a deal that somehow puts a few things in my country, and I do this thing and make you happy. Maybe put some money in my bank account in Switzerland. They're happy with that. So Africa is going to have to deal with Africa eventually. And I'm thinking that these young people are not going to stand for that.
Any final thoughts, Samuel?
Great to talk to you. You seem to be liberated to a certain extent.
Absolutely. This gives me liberty to speak to you for 30 minutes,
I was when I was at Africa, I had a boss and I had to be at work at 9 o'clock and they checking the roster and all this kind of thing. And you better go do that. But when CFA became an independent and I became an organization, man, I didn't know what freedom was. But sometimes crisis bring out the best in terms of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I can say since that point, I've been very happy being very independent, able to take on issues that I want to take on, move as I want to move. I found out that my nature is not to be within another institution per se, but be in a position to do what I think best to happen. So I chose to unite Africa and to build cooperation and coordination. I'm not going to be able to get the job completed, but I think I can pass it on and make sure some of the next generation we're taking on, because eventually we have to unite and bring ourselves together and negotiate with the rest of the world.
We are here to climb on your shoulders, Mel. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. At any time I can be helpful,
absolutely,
don't hesitate to reach out.
We want to know what you think about the White House meeting between President Donald Trump and 5 West African leaders. Drop us a comment in the comment section below. And of course, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to Paul Ndiho on Substack, X, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and YouTube.